And I am really excited about our discussion today because I'm psyched whenever we spotlight technology to help us through a complex life decision. But I'm also really excited because we're going to be um, featuring a real life caregiver story and how the technology solution helped with that. And so without further ado, let's meet our panel members for the day. And that is Sue Riley and Rob Blatt. And there they are. Welcome, you two. I'm really excited to get into our discussion on the topic of caregiving and technology and learn about the technology that you all have created. But first, let's get to know the two of you. And I'm going to start with Rob. Rob, who's the founder of ENVOY. But Rob, give us a little bit of your background and what led to your current career position.
Absolutely. Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having us. I'm really very excited for the opportunity to share what we're doing at ENVOY at Home. So my background is started off in engineering, actually computer engineering. I have a master's in computer engineering. So I started off in big tech, and I probably spent half my large corporate background in the big tech space, which was in a super exciting place to be. And then I went to Wharton and got the I attended the Wharton management program, and I shifted using technology in finance. So that's a highly regulated big data space that frankly in today's world can't exist without technology. And so I live in this intersection of using technology and data to help people really make important decisions in their life. And what I tell people is that sometimes the only thing that's more important to them than their health is their money. And so what I've spent about the other half of my corporate background was helping portfolio managers really understand where there's risks in managing a global international portfolio. So that's my background in this tech and finance and big data space.
I love it. I love it. And we're going to learn more about your platform here in a bit, but I'm really delighted that you have invited Sue Riley on. And when I was chatting about Rob about this discussion, I was like, what really makes these discussions great is when we can have a real life user, a real life somebody who's experienced caregiving and experienced your platform. That can add a lot more authenticity and meaning to our discussion. So Sue, first off, I am delighted that you're here. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm a communication director by trade. Worked in big tech for 40 some years. I am now retired. I am the eldest of 4 children, 3 brothers out of state. I am the closest to my parents. We live around 10 minutes away from them. But I had always made a promise to my dad. After my mother passed, he was a caregiver to her. After my mother passed, I always made a promise to my dad that he would never leave the home. We would figure out some way to keep him living independently. So I watch grandchildren, and I also really primary responsibility for my dad now.
Great. Let me dive in a little bit more to your caregiving situation. So you'd mentioned your mom has passed. Your dad is in that category of solo ager that is so popular. But and you mentioned that he was a caregiver to mom. What happened with mom? Can you talk about her health challenges?
Yeah, so she developed an autoimmune disease. Had trouble walking for a little while, living with my dad. He ended up getting very nervous, as you can imagine. He's the same age as she is, or she was. And watching her decline and caring about her was taking a toll on him. So we started to bring in caregivers. This is before, I think, even ENVOY at Home was invented.
Mm-hmm.
And I was speaking to my colleague at work about the challenges of, not only worrying about my mother, but also my father as the caregiver, being with her 24 hours a day. And over the years, this relationship with my colleague happened to be Rob's wife, Robin. She told me about Envoy at Home as it was being developed. Long story short, Mom passed away, and then we didn't need anyone for Dad for a while. But we started to see signs that, he was slowing down. He didn't want to do his finances anymore, asked my husband to take over doing his taxes for him. And, little signs that, he might get lost going somewhere or whatnot. So that's around the time when I heard about Envoy at Home possibly being able to help. He wasn't ready yet for a caregiver per se to come in and stay with him, right?
Mm-hmm.
But just little signs that he was starting a little decline, and we were worried about him. So we started, we adopted this technology, this system, Envoy at Home, to help us monitor him, because we kind of figured out that hoping he was okay was not a strategy.
I love it. Boy, we could put that in big quotes, is that you need to have a plan, and you need to have a plan in place. Well, thanks for sharing that, because it's you have the perspective of having a caregiving situation, and your dad has a perspective of how challenging that can be, taking care of a loved one at home when you live with them, but when you're separated by distance, that creates a whole new set of challenges. So let's we got a great overview there, and I know you've given us tons of talking points. Rob, is this unique to your experience, or is Sue in the sweet spot of your typical user?
Sue is, I didn't know it at the time when our paths first crossed, but what I've come to discover is that Sue really is in the sweet spot. And, today the topic is, spotlight on digital caregiving. And so I found myself as a caregiver a few years ago when I lost my dad, and my mother was now living alone in a house that was way too big for her. She needed knee surgery, on a fixed income, all of those kinds of things that tend to happen as you age. And I'm also 1,000 miles away. So you can imagine the challenges that I would have in a family member also about 1,000 miles away, just a few more states to the west of where I am. And I shared my background earlier, so I didn't really come from a place of from a caregiving or a healthcare background. So the question is, how do you really understand what's going on in the home? Because as Sue very pointedly put it, hope is not a strategy. And what I wanted to know was what's Mom doing in a way that is actionable, helps me understand where there's opportunities where we can prevent any problems that might be brewing. At the time, I didn't really fully appreciate, what I was really setting out to, what questions I was setting out to answer. But it turns out that with my background, I was able to create this digital caregiving solution that really addressed a couple of needs of what we've discovered are really the main concerns of caregivers. And Sue touched on some of them. But if you think about the tools that caregivers have, they're really antiquated. It's like the digital age has missed caregiving. I don't really know why, it just has. And if you think about what the digital age has done over the last few years to how it's transformed all kinds of our lives, how we shop, right? We just purchase online, how we travel, how we manage our finances, how
Health
we
and fitness. I mean, I think,
yeah, how we commute, or in the last 2 years, the fact that we didn't have to commute as much, how we just arrange transportation. I'm thinking about things like Uber. So this whole digitalization of so many industries have been so transformative. And what do they have in common? And they have in common, they bring things like accessibility to everybody. They really democratize the whole space. They bring affordability into the picture. They bring mobility to match a lifestyle that we all share. I mean, look at what Sue was talking about. She's a communications leader at a large company. She's on the go. She's really, the embodiment of today's caregiver. This is really what our world is today. And what they've also brought, Steve, is this idea of data. If we can digitize things and use data, we can really enjoy the benefits that come along with all of the kinds of things that data can do for us. So we're living in a world today, or we were, until solutions like ENVOY at Home came to pass, where caregivers, and I think Sue talked about this, where you'd almost have to trade your agency as a caregiver, your ability to choose and your freedom, to help your loved one have their agency and live independently. And the question is, I ask is that really a trade-off that you have to make? Do you really have to give up your agency to support the aging of somebody living independently? And we believe that the answer is no, you don't. And I'm going to put up behind me while I'm talking just a screen of what we do.
Okay.
And it is in real time, and you never know what could happen. This is an individual who's been kind enough to share their data, and we're going to get into this a little bit more as we go. But as it updates in real time, actually, this is William. William is an elder gentleman living alone, and he is now in the toilet. He's now toileting right now.
Oh boy.
This is real time. And so, ENVOY is monitoring for safety, for frequency, for all kinds of things. And we'll dive into that in a minute or two. But the issue here is, as caregivers, and I think Sue was talking about this, is you're often given coping skills. How do I provide self-care? But what we really lack are, how do we have more cost-effective solutions? How do we get some of our time back? I mean, Sue has a family, and many of our clients have families as well. How do we give time back to our families? And, if you think about the kinds of challenges that older adults suffer, many of our clients are suffering with this cognitive decline, not always formally diagnosed as dementia, by the way, until they start getting some data that we provide. And so if someone is experiencing cognitive decline, or they are diagnosed as with dementia, why do we give them part-time care for a situation that's not part-time? I mean, people don't have dementia when there's a family member in the house. People don't have dementia when there's a caregiver in the house. People don't have dementia for 4 hours a day during a shift. It's a 24/7, it's 168-hour challenge that families have dealing with their loved ones who are experiencing dementia. So why do we provide them part-time care? And the answer is we do that because we really just can't afford any other solutions. So again, we thought about this. How do we bring this? How do we really tackle this problem? And what we've come to learn is that the largest determinant of health is, and I wish we had a poll going, because I was surprised to get the answer, but the largest determinant of our health is, and by the way, there's more activity here, there's going on behind me, is actually our own behavior. So it's not medicine. That's only 10% of a determinant of our health. It's not social determinants. That's only 20%, I believe. It's not our genes, which is 30%. It's our behavior, and that's the thing we know least about, particularly when someone is in a home. So if we can bring this idea of behavior discovery, and we can do this in real time, and we can do it affordable, and we can do it 24 hours a day, we can really help caregivers, and we can help seniors and older adults live independently longer.
Well, I tell you, like, as I'm seeing, and I can't wait to get a demo of your product here, of the dashboard there, but as I'm seeing the activity and I'm reflecting on Sue's story, is I think one of the most stressful things as caregivers is not knowing, is that, you know, even if you're 10 minutes away from dad, you only know what you know when you walk in the door. And, you know, yesterday, actually, we had a caregiver who, cross country caregiving situation. Mom and dad did a great job of disguising the problems. You know, they didn't
Right.
want
They do.
their daughter to know. And she came for her annual visit and was shocked when she saw mom and dad's apartment, and they had covered it up. And I think we all know that things like that happen. And if we can use data and technology to give us that peace of mind, I think that that is a fantastic gift for caregivers. Rob, you've sort of tempted me here. I would love to see a full screen of that dashboard if you're ready to give us a little demo.
I would be happy to. And before I change my screen, I just want to just put something up on my camera here. I think it's important to understand where we get the data from and how we do that, because I think that really helps people really understand this. So this is a little device. We don't make it. This is a smart home hub. They're available everywhere. What we really do is provide the software that powers our insights and our behavior discovery, which, you know, we received a patent for last year. And this just plugs right into your internet. Very easy to set up. We work with caregivers all the time. I tell people that if you've ever set up like a Comcast modem or something, you're way overqualified. There's no tools involved. And there are these little wireless sensors that you place around the house, and we show people how to do this, and we do it with them. And within about an hour or less, you are up and running. And with that, with your up and running, I will share my screen, and let's take a closer look. Let's take a closer look at this, but I want to flip over to somebody else in the interest of privacy here. So just give me a moment here to flip over to another individual. And now I will share my screen. Okay, and I believe you can see that.
Yep.
So this is a 91-year-old gentleman who lives alone and drives and is completely independent. And his family lives nearby. And we're able to monitor when we talk about behavior discovery. I think it's really important to understand what kind of behaviors we're talking about. We're talking about behaviors like wandering at night. You know, did someone get up to go to the bathroom and go back to the bedroom? We're talking about changes in toileting frequency and duration. We're talking about, you know, this idea of social isolation, or people leaving. We're talking about compliance to medical orders, or people going into parts of the home or using stairs and whatnot, or just sitting too long. So it's activity, it's ambulation, it's elopement, it's wandering, it's all of these kinds of things. Now, this individual happened to have left an hour and 41 minutes ago, which is okay. And what we're able to monitor for this individual are a whole bunch of activities. But just to give you a quick tour, you know, we know certain things in his home environment.
And not to interrupt, so right now we're looking at a dashboard that a family member, a caregiver, a medical professional, let's say a home care agency, could be monitoring this, correct?
That's correct. And what tends to happen, people don't typically live in the app, although they can. You know, we provide all kinds of real-time notifications around changes in behaviors that on two timelines, Steve. One is real time, which is what you're looking at now. So if Don were to leave, you're going to get a notification that he left. And when he returns, you can get a notification that he returned. If anything that's germane, and this is all very bespoke and personalized to your specific situation. So what may be a concern today may not be a concern 3 weeks or a month from now, or you may choose in your situation, Steve, to think differently about different behaviors and activities based upon the health and wellness of your loved one.
Rob, can I just say one thing? What
Sure.
I wanted to know about my dad was, it showed me, he's leaving or not leaving. What I wanted to really know was he leaving after hours? Was he leaving in the early hours, 4 o'clock in the morning? Was he leaving after 11 o'clock at night? And I set that up such that I would get an alert. So it would tell me your father left the home after these hours that I set up.
Right, and you also, I think so. I think had a caregiver come in later on in the morning, so you're able to understand that was happening.
Yeah, you can determine. Yeah, I wanted to know, are people arriving on their shift on time?
Wow. Well, I'm sure that raised the bar for whatever caregivers you were hiring, because
And they knew. Yeah.
yeah,
And
that's
it's
great.
part of peace of mind. I mean, as a caregiver, she just wants to know that dad has the support that he needs. And I think, Sue, it's probably also worth talking about, dad leaving the home at night really wasn't your only concern. It was his behavior at night. And there are a number of things that I think you discovered
Right.
over his journey. Perhaps you can share more about that.
Yeah. So another thing I really wanted to learn more about was, how many times and how long he stayed in the bathroom. So what I found out, which was a huge surprise to me, was, the frequency that he was going to the bathroom. Became concerned about that. Took that data because it really tracks this over time, and you can actually see a chart and says that's going up. The more, the frequency is going up. Something's concerning me. Take that to the doctors. It brought me to, he was, the doctor's like, wow, he's wandering at night. He's going to the bathroom more frequently. So it brought about early dementia diagnosis, such that he is now taking pills to slow that down.
Mm-hmm.
It let me know about prostate issues he was having. It let me know about sometimes UTIs. And also, I didn't know it, but he needed a CPAP machine, and he has that now.
Wow. Well, this is truly telemedicine. Like, a lot of times I think we think of, oh, I can FaceTime with my doctor or what have you. But really, if everybody can reflect on going to your physical, like if dad went to a physical and the doctor checked him out for 5-10 minutes or what have you, some of these things would not be discoverable.
No.
It was providing this data over a period of time. And nobody knows how much he's going. Any of us, even when you wake up in the morning, you don't realize how many times you went to the bathroom. But
Right.
Now this is trackable. And this is data that our medical professionals can now really work with and provide meaningful solutions. This is really exciting stuff.
And this didn't happen on one office visit. This happened over time. And so, it wasn't one day, Sue woke up and said, oh, look at this data and let's get all this fixed. Initially it was, dad's really active at night. And then that led to monitoring his cognitive capability and the diagnosis with dementia and treatment for that. And then, now there's another issue. His activity is changing at night. Well, let's understand more about that. Led to, a CPAP or a sleep study and a CPAP and so forth. And so this is, how old is your dad, Sue?
He'll be 91 in March.
Yeah.
Right.
This has been, Sue, I think has been tracking his journey for a couple of years from when he was actually, I think when we started, Sue, your dad was actually fairly independent. I mean, he still had keys to the car, right?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. And now, of course, his lifestyle is such where he's not, thankfully, driving on his own.
No, I mean, the night wandering and times when he There was one time he went out at 4 a.m. He thought he wanted to go get some pancakes with his car. Unfortunately, it was the beginning of a blizzard.
Oops.
And so he's, he stepped out, started to drive down the road a little bit. We got an alert that he left, right? Start calling him immediately. Dad, what are you doing? It's a blizzard. He got disoriented. I talked him on the phone. Dad, pull into the nearest business, wait there, tell me what that business is. And we went and retrieved him. So what did I learn from that? Well, first of all, saved him from a big risk. He could have been out lost for hours because it was really downpour of snow. And secondly, we started to take the car away, and it was time to hand those keys in. So
let's take a dive into some of the data again. Let's take a quick look at that. And I also want to share that I talked about earlier, we use the smart home technology, but it's really the magic of the software. We're all about not making a home smarter, we're about making caregivers smarter. And I think that that's a really important differentiator in terms of how we think about things. The smart home stuff is interesting and it's fun, but it's really not what we're here for. So we're back to the app. If you can see my screen, I think you can, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And I just hit the tab at the bottom. We're looking at a feed, much like your Facebook feed or something. How do you know that the Envoy was monitoring something when you're not there live looking at it? And so this is a trail of what's been monitored, and we can see that, and it's in reverse chronological order, so we can see what's been happening. You can see that this gentleman was in the bathroom a few times, and you can see that he started his day. So it's not always about getting information that's bad or negative. There's something to be said about, hey, there's something good happened. Like, hey, Dad started his day. I like to know that it's a caregiver. So when I call him, I know I'm not distracting him. I know I'm not waking him up, but we can have a productive conversation about maybe what he did yesterday or last night. And it can really change the nature of the relationship. And you get to learn about his behavior in terms of, well, is he starting his day later? Is he, and why is that? And so there's a lot of insights and data that underpins all this. But I'm just going to kind of scroll back. These are all the things that has been happening. This is 3 o'clock out last night. Dad is wandering again, something that he does a lot, this gentleman. He's very active at night, and the family discovered it using a digital caregiver, specifically, of course, Envoy at Home. And now they're able to understand why is this gentleman, you're just looking at one data point, but I will show you in a minute a whole lot more data points. Why is he so active at night, and why is he, bathroom overstays? As it turns out that there's a lot of anxiety issues associated with his blood pressure, and he likes to check his blood pressure a lot. And that was only discovered through some of the data at Envoy at Home, which I can share with that a little bit differently. But this is just the app. This is a running feed of what's going on. We can also, as you would probably expect, because we have sensors in the home, we know his exact movement around the house. So families, I think, are initially enamored with that. When they get the system, you can really see, where somebody is moving about the space. But I will tell you, Steve, this is the least interesting aspect of what we do. It's it's kind of fun and cute, but when you let the system do the behavior discovery and all the behavior monitoring, that's where all the firepower is when it comes to using the technology.
Hey, Rob, I don't want to interrupt, but I was waiting for this question, and it's from one of our LinkedIn Live users, Dolov, and he says, how do you deal with the desire to maintain independence and the fear of older people from the constant monitoring of their actions? And I'm sure that if anybody has this system, they've given their permission. But have you ever, like when you look at that feed, it's like, wow, this is like Big Brother's watching, I keep track of my kids on their Find My iPhone, and sometimes they're on me because I'm kind of watching them like a hawk when they're out there. Can you share some of the privacy and permission aspect?
Yeah, of course, consented permission is always required. I mean, that's of course non-negotiable. I mean, family members are putting this in homes, and so they're of course providing their express consent around that. However, from a privacy, and I will also add another word, respect perspective, I think that's really important to understand, because people don't want to give up their independence. They don't want to give up their freedom. They want their privacy. We use passive monitoring, and I don't know if I shared that earlier, but the whole idea of passive monitoring is super important. We don't use wearables. There's no cameras, there's no recording, there's no audio. It's what we're doing is we're discovering the behavior using, the very inexpensive but incredibly reliable motion sensors, really. And what that allows, and they're very small, they're very discreet. And so much like when you move around a home, no one notices a thermostat anymore. Nobody notices light switches, right? Nobody notices a wall outlet. They're just part of the environment. And so after a very short period of time, it just is in the fabric of the home, and the resident, frankly, just doesn't care. In fact, what we've learned, and what some of our clients have told us, is that when they do notice it, they're actually relieved that a family member cares enough to be able to support them. God forbid there's in a situation where they need help, because we know that in the traditional wearable, the efficacy of that is very, very poor, and they don't have to rely on any kind of wearable to summon help. So
Right.
it's been very, very well received.
Yeah, my dad wasn't even aware of it. He knew something was in the house, but he doesn't look at the data. He just goes about his business. And we are the ones who see the patterns emerging, right? And then you can begin your discussion with your loved one about, hey, Dad, I see you're going to the bathroom a lot more at night, or I understand you're leaving, at night after hours. Where are you going? That's how you can begin these kind discussions. Great.
We've got a bunch of questions that are coming in. How about I'll throw a few of them out, and I think
Sure.
it can lead to us looking more at the dashboard and things like that. But Carla says, by behavior, are you referring to smoking, drinking, diet, activity, etc.? Now, I'm assuming that other than opening so by behavior, I think you're talking about behavior meaning spending time in the bathroom and things of that nature, correct? But are there ways to monitor some of the other stuff?
No, that's absolutely correct, Steve. By behavior, we're talking about nutrition. Oftentimes that is an incredibly important issue, particularly if its nutrition is not necessarily accompanied around times where there may be medication. You may have to eat when you take meds. So we think about it as nutrition. We think about it as activity levels. We think about it as wandering. We can't really, there are limits to what we can do. And I think there's certainly limits to technology. So the idea of, we know that if you're not going to the refrigerator, you're probably not having, your lunch, or you're not having a meal, which could be very important. And we can know when it happens, and we can also know that it didn't happen. So if over a period of time, no one is going into, having their nutrition, those are classic symptoms of dementia. It's door confusion, it's dehydration associated with lack of nutrition. It's things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, we
great.
actually had a sensor on the cabinet where my dad's pills were kept. So we knew when that door was opened and not.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And so, well, actually here, let me get to some of these other questions, comments, and I've got a few on my mind, but I really like what Vivian is sharing here. And this was the topic of yesterday's discussion. And she says, offering concrete date ties in with care planning with siblings who previously might not have been on the same page. I know that you all hear this all the time, is that and Sue, you alluded to it, is you're the one who's local. You're seeing all this stuff. You're trying to convince your brother and sister that, you know, there's some issues here. And I could see where a platform like this can help. It's actual data. Yes, dad is wandering. Yes, dad is not taking his meds. Yes, we need to come up with a plan.
I'll interject and I'll turn it over to Sue. But Vivian, thank you for that question. The conversation that happens with data is truly transformative. When you walk in or you talk to family members or even your primary care docs or any clinician at all, and you have concrete data, it's irrefutable. It's that powerful. This is not conjecture. This is not, I think, perhaps we need more care or we need to change the level of care intensity. And I think Sue's experience is clearly indicative of that.
Yeah, and what I will say is, you know, when we first got the system, I sat with, you know, the ENVOY at home outline and talked about and thought about what I wanted to be alerted about, right? So all this data is being collected from all the rooms in the house, whatever. But I wanted to personally know about certain risky things, you know, that were life or death. Is he leaving the home at night? Is the door unlocked? Is, you know, is he in the bathroom? Did he stay in the bathroom? Has he been in there for 2 hours? That's a problem. Has he been in there? So I get to set the amount of time that I feel is reasonable. What's his usual pattern? And then I know when that pattern has been broken. And that's risk. And so when I know the risk, I can do something about it. You know, if you had a caregiver there, that caregiver is not going to be collecting this data and writing it down and analyzing it for you to determine these patterns, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's more anecdotal from a caregiver.
Oh, and that's not, and the paid caregiver, even if you as a family member had to try to document your dad's behavior, it would be next to impossible. Like you need a detection device like this. Now, Ashley asks, okay, we talked about the monitors that are monitoring movement, but are there any cameras or mics involved?
No, I think I covered that earlier, Ashley, but the answer is no. I mean, people are really creeped out by that, and there are no cameras, there are no mics, there are no recording devices, there's none of that. It's completely, and it's also completely passive. So the only thing we ask of an older adult is just live your life in your home. There's a lot of conversation around older adults and technology. There's no panel. There's no off switch. There's nothing for an older adult to engage with. We ask nothing of them other than to do what they like to do in their home.
That's great. Now, Sue has some questions about fall detection. Can you detect falls as they happen, or would you just be detecting lack of movement from one room to the other?
Great question. So we think about falls a bit more broadly. We think about them as a trip interruption. Someone started a journey and they didn't complete their journey. And so what typically happens, Steve, is that we monitor. There's so many things that are being monitored throughout the day. So when people start their day, when they if they miss a check-in, if there's an overstay in the bathroom, if they're using parts of the home, if there's an issue on the stairs, they are on the stairs and perhaps there's a fall. I mean, where do people tend to fall? It could be in bathrooms and stairs and things like that. And so when you look at the activity plan and how we're monitoring behaviors throughout the day, there are so many opportunities for there to be a trip interruption that we tend to capture it. It could be as soon as minutes, or it could be perhaps a little longer. If there's all of a sudden a start uptick in inactivity, like right now we're monitoring, it's a little hard to see in the background here, but William Smith, we're monitoring for inactivity. Every time William moves, and he's a very active adult, he gets a fresh, in this case, looks like about 2 hours. So depending upon where William is in his journey throughout the day, we will discover whether or not there is a serious issue. Again, if there's a trip interruption on the stairs, it'll be minutes. If it's somewhere else, it could be longer than minutes. But the idea that someone fell and they were, haven't been found for hours would be nearly impossible in a service like Envoy at Home.
Within the confines of the home that's being monitored.
Correct.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, okay.
And let me just add one more thing. So we have very active adult. I mean, in some cases, people leave and they're not supposed to leave. If they leave, we have clients in not the most hospitable environments. I mean, in Texas in the summer, very warm. Someone leaves. There could be an issue when they step out of the house for more than 15 minutes. Maybe they're allowed to go in their backyard or something. Or we have clients in the mountains and high elevations and being outside. So it's not, this idea of falling in the home is certainly very important, but, it could also happen right around the home too. We expect someone to come back into the house and they didn't, so
Yeah.
it's really this whole lifestyle.
Or leaving a door open. You monitor even if the garage door has been left open in the night.
That's right.
Or,
All kinds of, right. That's a sign of forgetfulness. There's a risk there. Sue said earlier that, hope is not a strategy. What we've also discovered is that, sadly, caregivers, and I'm a caregiver, we're very poor at is understanding the risks, is assessing risk. And, now with a digital caregiver in a service like Envoy at Home, we can get much, much, much better.
Okay. Now, Jonathan has a great question, and I saw some things on the dashboard, but I don't know if this was communicated. Is the system flagging potential situations such as not eating, toileting, etc., and raising them to the family member proactively, or
Yes.
is it up to the family member to notice the patterns? If you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. We have clients that monitor exactly that, Jonathan. It's, mom hasn't opened the refrigerator these are real stories in, 6 hours, like through the course of the day. That's a concern. We have a nurse who's monitoring her mother. She just happens to be a nurse. She's actually a nurse for a school. And so she's a nurse by training. And I think her sister's a nurse. And I think her mother might have even been a nurse. And they have a lot of concerns around UTIs. So they want to know, mom hasn't been to the bathroom in a while. That's a problem. Mom has been to the bathroom too many times. That's a problem. So this is, live, real time.
And I think to the question, but you don't need to be in front of the screen.
No.
You can set like alerts.
Yes.
So that if mom doesn't go to the bathroom every 2 hours, I want just something sending me a message.
Yeah, Jonathan. Yeah, that's a great point. This is built for today's mobile lifestyle. Nobody is sitting looking. I mean, you could, but most people are not sitting and looking at this all day. It's when there's something that needs. There's something that needs to be shared. It's shared, and it's shared at the cadence and frequency that matches your needs, Jonathan, which could be different than Sue's needs and my needs and so forth.
Great. Somebody asks, you had talked about tripping and falling on the stairs and identifying that, and they say, how do you detect a trip in the stairs within minutes? That seems really short without cameras to see what's happening.
It's called great software, is really what it is. We are getting so much data from the home. We get data from all these little sensors multiple times a minute. And it's all being analyzed in real time. And so we can make determinations around things like a potential problem on the stairs.
So you got a sensor at the base of the step, and you have a sensor at the top of the step. And so when he started the trip and if he didn't finish the trip.
Okay.
At the top of the steps. And you can get an alert. Yeah.
We actually configure it slightly differently than that, but Sue's essentially right. I mean, there's these sensors are very inexpensive. And so in homes where there are stairs, it's highly recommended that we put one in the stairwell. And we know that if people have not ambulated away from the stairs in a reasonable amount of time, that's a problem.
Okay, let's see. Got some great questions here. I'm just going to keep on going. Paula says on the screen you shared it. It said something like in bedroom, not sleeping, and sleeping and okay. How does the sensor detect that?
I would have to go back. We don't detect sleeping. What we do detect is if someone has left the bedroom. So often what we see is a lot of activity at night, and activity. So if there's activity, if people are restless sleepers, that could be indicative of a sleep quality. Now, we don't make any diagnosis or any judgment or anything like that at all. But what we do see is if there's, a high frequency of movement at night. I mean, just think about how you sleep at night. And if you're constantly turning and moving and so on and so forth, you're generally probably not having the best night's sleep. Having said that, what is unique to you is really your sleep pattern. So it's really a way for, a caregiver to really understand if there's any changes. If all of a sudden you're seeing a lot of inactivity where you didn't see it before, that may be something you might want to question, or vice versa.
And let's see, Carla asks, how many sensors are typically placed in the home?
That's a great question, Carla. Our starter package has 8 sensors. They're a combination of motion and contact, and it's typically 7 in 1. And we've been in homes where they're 5,000 square foot executive homes with a single person living in a home like that. And in those situations, of course, we'll use a little more. And we've actually have clients in studio apartments in assisted living communities where, I don't know, they could be like 600 square foot apartments. And we monitor space, Carla. So if you can think of a studio apartment, the left side of the room can be where you sleep, and the right side of the room might be like your living room space, and another part of the room might be a little kitchenette. And so we move this, we place the sensors, or have you place the sensors in those in those spaces, so we can really help you understand where somebody is and what their lifestyle is. So to answer your question, it does vary, but we found that as just to make life easier, a starting package of those 8 sensors is really accommodates most situations.
Great. And I can't believe that we've gone this long without this question coming up. Sue says, what's the cost of the equipment and the ongoing monitoring?
Very good question. So the cost of the starter package is $399. And that gets you, this hub and all those sensors, and we provide what we call a virtual setup. So we'll do a one-on-one Zoom meeting, much like we're doing now with a family member, and we'll guide them to setup. We'll onboard them, and we will help them set up their activity plan. And after that, you're welcome to adjust it as you see fit, because it's all consumer friendly. At least that's the goal. But we're always available. Our monitoring cost is $99 a month, which comes out to a little under 14 cents an hour. So people are finding this to be just, a hundredth the cost. I mean, I think most of the people who are coming into this program probably know the cost of senior living. They know the cost of hourly care. And what's really quite a challenge, you might need somebody for a few hours, but unfortunately, for most families, you have to buy, or most in-home care services charge or require you to buy blocks of 4 hours shifts. And in some cases, they may be multiple 4-hour shifts. We don't have any contracts. You can start and cancel, and you can move the equipment anywhere you like. And as I said, it's about 14, it's a little less than 14 cents an hour.
And if I could add, I would say it's helped me, using ENVOY in the beginning, and when my father was just seeing some signs of dementia, and using this monitoring system and not having to pay $25 an hour for 24-hour care, right? Saved me, couple $100,000 that I can now apply to it later in his life, right? And it also let me know when I needed to bring in more care
Got it.
to
Yeah.
go along with the Envoy.
Michelle asks, is Envoy at Home best suited for monitoring a person who lives alone versus a couple, or how does that work?
You know, we work in environments where there are multiple people, because you're able to, in homes where you know, someone is upstairs in the bathroom and someone is wandering at night, the family knows typically who's doing what. We've had situations, Steve, where you know, they're a couple, they sleep in the same bed. The husband had advanced dementia. The wife would take out her hearing aids at night and would have no idea that the husband is on the move. The wife would leave for hours during the day and the husband would be left alone, but you know, with Envoy at Home. So the short answer to the question, we can work in environments where there's a husband and wife. And we can, you know, obviously we can work in environments where people are living alone.
Got it. Let's see. Mitchell says it's worth saying that Envoy at Home would probably be helpful for monitoring a physically or mentally disabled person who's not elderly.
Oh, yeah.
That's true. In fact, we actually we're working on a pilot now where there's some developmentally disabled adults who live independently, where they're supervised with social workers, but it's really the exact same concerns, right? It's, you know, we're not sure we can, you know, we can't find caregivers 24 hours a day. There are labor issues, there are cost issues, and it's really very similar concerns.
Yes.
Great question. Thank you.
And let's see, someone says, do families have to set up the activity parameters themselves, such as mom gets up between 7 and 9 a.m., etc.? So I guess you can set that up yourself, but your team will also assist in helping somebody set up those parameters.
Yeah, we get everybody set up. It's in that 1 hour when we get it, and it's not hard coded to an hour, but you know, typically in about an hour we get everybody set up, and then it's just a question of, well, and we know this going in, what are your care concerns, because that really drives everything. And what's really very interesting is that people have certain expectations. Oh, mom goes to sleep at a certain hour, and mom does this at a certain time, and we set it all up and we start monitoring it. And usually this happens almost every time, Steve, within the first night. Wow, I didn't know, you know, fill in the blank. I didn't know that mom did that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize she was getting up that many times. I didn't realize she's staying up that late. You know, she's staying up downstairs till 12:30 at night and then going up during the dark upstairs in a long dark stairway to her bedroom.
Yeah,
So
I bet you that if I sort of defined what I think my parameters are, that if I actually saw the monitoring, it would be different. Mara asks, does your system integrate with a Bluetooth personal emergency response device for monitoring safety outside of the home? And so these are in general pendants and watches that would monitor outside the home. Do you have any integrations with something like that?
we don't currently today. We're really still trying to understand what the effective use cases are, because there are a number of things that people have available through either, like, you know, Find My Friends with their iPhone or things like that. And so I think it still remains to be seen what the best way to integrate that together is. And I would expect at some point we would probably have some partnerships with some players in that space, and so that there's one platform for data. But we'll see how that evolves.
Great. Well, man, these discussions always go by way quicker than I think. And I just glanced at the clock and we've already burned through an hour. The good news is that I think I got through most of the questions. So I'll say to both of you, sort of, if you want to kind of wrap up with some closing thoughts, and I want to remind everybody that we recorded this, so the recording will be available and you can share this with your loved ones or your family members if you're interested. But any sort of final thoughts?
Sure. So if you want to go first, and then I'll just take it from there.
Yeah. I will say that without a doubt, once I got introduced to this Envoy at Home system, I wouldn't want to live without it as a caregiver. I couldn't live without it. It really has helped me identify a number of risks that could have gone very badly for us had I not had it. So I would just say, you know, for me, it was a must-have.
Great, great.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. And that's really kind of the direction I was going to go in as well for closing thought. The feedback that we've been getting from our clients has been just incredible. I wish I had this sooner. This is incredible. The answer to our prayers. It's really quite humbling, honestly, as someone with my background in technology, be able to build a service like this that really does help people's lives, improves people's lives. And there's really no downside to having a digital caregiver. It is so enriching in terms of what it can provide in terms of your lifestyle, your peace of mind, sharing the care, and making some important financial decisions in terms of when to spend your precious hard-earned dollars, as well as, of course, the emotional value that you get. So, we live in a society where the number of older adults is going to outnumber the number of caregivers. The cost of care has gone up tremendously. We believe that caregivers are really the collateral damage to an aging society. And so to be able to have tools like this are just incredibly powerful. And I would just encourage people who happen to see this and are on the call, we're always available to see if we're a good fit for your needs, and we're happy to do so.
I always like asking our guests to make closing thoughts, because then a few more good questions come in. So one question is, do you need Wi-Fi?
Great question. And so let's be clear. We do need internet. We don't use Wi-Fi. Okay, so we just need a home router in your house. That home router typically provides Wi-Fi to your phone. But this thing just plugs right in. There's a little port back here, and it just plugs right into your home router, and we just eliminate Wi-Fi because it's just another potential source of failure.
Okay. And then I know you talked about this, but Betty wants to know, tell us again the cost of the starter package.
$3.99, Betty, and $99 a month for ongoing service. And we really provide a sort of a concierge level of support. So, we really walk you through the setup process. We walk you through the monitoring, and when we're done with you in about an hour, you are completely up and running, and you will receive the benefits of digital caregiving through Envoy at Home.
Great. And then Beth asks, what about power outages?
Great question. Well, they're all great questions. They're all great questions. But thank you, Beth. So power outage is very interesting. Also, internet outages, which people haven't asked as well. We monitor both. If there's any interruption in the communication, we are monitoring that. In today's world, where seniors and all of us, quite frankly, get service like that triple play service where you're getting your phone through your internet. So when that service is compromised, your ability to use your phone is often compromised as well. So they're both monitored. If that hub is unable to communicate, you are notified within seconds. We've actually had family members know that discover that there's been outages when there's storms come in, and we've even had family members discover that the power has been restored when they see the hub come back online. And they've actually discovered this before the resident in their own home knew that they had power. So that's a very and also the batteries. We haven't talked about the batteries last an incredible amount of time. They often last well over a year. Frankly, they can last 2 years. People are shocked at how long they last. And they're also monitored as well.
Okay, so if a sensor is no longer working because of the battery, you'll receive a notification.
You get plenty of notice, because we know that it could be weeks before you are able to get your loved one's home.
One thing it identified for me was also my dad's air condition had broken down in this section of the house, and it told me the temperature was rising in the house. So It's fantastic.
And the starter package, I believe you said it, there's 8 sensors. Nathalia asks, how much does it cost for extra sensors? Let's say you are in a larger home and you'd like some more sensors.
Yeah, it's currently they're $35.
Okay.
There's been, we've had these supply chain hiccups, but they haven't, we've been able to navigate through them. So $35 a sensor. We have clients who realize after the fact, like, wow, this is so great. I want to put one here, here, and here. And we just ship them out.
Got it. Well, this has been an amazing discussion. I want to thank you both for your time. Sue, thank you for sharing your personal story. But I also like to thank our audience, because without these thought-provoking questions, we're not kind of directing into what you want to know about. So great questions and comments today. So just a reminder, I'm recording this. I'll have Rob's contact information on the recording, so you can easily get in touch with him. And I really want to thank you all for a really interesting discussion today that intersects with a lot of the stuff we were talking about yesterday.
Yeah, it's such part of the portfolio of helping people living independently now, and it really should be considered in so many different situations. So Steve, thank you, and Sue, thank you as well for agreeing to come on board. This has been really great opportunity for us to share what we're doing.
All right, I love it. See you all later.
All righty.